A peaceful evening suddenly turns into a nightmare when FBI Director Agent Sarah Walker is pulled over without reason by a white police officer. But the story doesn't end there. Sarcasm, threats, and a gun drawn in the dark of night fuel the flames of injustice and racism. What the officer doesn't know is that the woman he is insulting is not only powerful, but a symbol of justice. Thank you for being here. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you. It was dusk when Agent Walker drove her sleek black SUV down the quiet road home after a long day at work. As the director of a large FBI branch, she craved a cozy dinner and relaxation, but fate had another challenge in store. Red and green lights flashed behind her, the reflection in her rearview mirror making Sarah squint. A siren blared, telling her to pull over. A smirk crossed her lips, not of amusement but sarcasm. She hadn't broken any traffic laws. Amara took a deep breath, pulled the car slowly to the side of the road and stopped. She turned on her headlights, a habit ingrained in her as a black woman living in America. Not because she didn't believe in the law, but because she knew that sometimes the people who enforced it weren't fair. A tall white man in a police uniform approached from behind, his demeanor authoritative and somewhat uneasy. He knocked on Sarah's car window, his eyes filled with suspicion. Sarah rolled down her window, her face calm and professional. "Hello, officer. How may I help you?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. The police officer, Officer Miller, squinted at her for a long moment before answering. "Driver's license and registration." "What happened? Can you tell me why you stopped the car?" Sarah asked. Officer Miller shrugged. "You look suspicious. I need to check your papers." Sarah frowned. "Suspicious? Could you elaborate? I don't think look suspicious is a valid reason to stop someone under the law." Officer Miller lost his patience, his face turning angry. "Are you going to argue with the police? Don't make things difficult. Just show your papers." Sarah slowly pulled her license and registration from the document holder, but she didn't hand them over right away. "I know the law, officer, and I know I have the right to demand a good reason. If you can't provide it, it's an abuse of power." Officer Miller slammed his hand on the car door, startling Sarah. "Don't lecture me about the law. I'm the one enforcing the law here." A sense of tension filled the air. Other cars passed by on the road, their headlights flashing and going out, but no one stopped. Sarah took a deep breath. "Officer, I stopped at your request. I have no intention of resisting, but I will not comply with unreasonable requests without a valid reason," she said. Her calmness only seemed to irritate Officer Miller more. "Who do you think you are? Hand over the papers." Sarah, still holding the papers, replied, "I am a law-abiding citizen, officer." As the conversation continued, Officer Miller grew more aggressive. He shined a flashlight into Sarah's face. "Are you carrying anything illegal? Drugs? Weapons? People like you?" Sarah's chest tightened. "No, officer, and I suggest you don't insult me." Officer Miller growled, "I don't need to respect people like you. I just need to do my job. If you don't cooperate, I'll be forced to take drastic measures." The words were a direct threat. "Officer," Sarah said, "I am willing to cooperate if you follow due process, but I cannot be forced against my rights." The voice echoed down the hall of the precinct, sharp and trembling. Sarah's face was pressed hard against the cold wall, her hands locked behind her back. "You think you can just walk in here like you own the place?" The officer sneered. "I've seen your type before." "This is a mistake. I work here," Sarah said. "Shut up," he yelled. "You don't belong here." He dragged her by the arm. "You people always think you're above the rules." Sarah knew what he saw, dark skin, natural curls. "Let me explain," she pleaded. "Explain what? How you snuck in?" He slapped her shoulder, shoving her against the wall. "You don't give orders here." "If you don't let me go, you're going to regret this," she said. He laughed cruelly. "Is that a threat?" "No," she said. It's a fact. He dragged her to the interrogation room. We'll see how tough you are in a cell. You don't even know who I am, she said. And I don't care, he shot back. That was the moment everything shifted. She stopped fighting, stopped pleading. She waited. Outside the room, footsteps echoed. A name was spoken. The officer stiffened. The door opened. It wasn't her heart that raced, it was his. What happens when the man who thought he held all the power realizes he was wrong? What happens when the person he tried to destroy turns out to be the one who decides his fate? This is a story of humiliation, injustice, and a reckoning. The officer's shoulders stiffened. The shift in the air was palpable. When the door finally opened and the truth stepped inside, it wasn't Sarah's heart that raced. It was his. We see you, we hear you, and we support you. Your voice matters, and your experiences deserve to be respected and honored. Now, sit back and get ready for a powerful and emotional journey filled with twists and turns. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to support our content. Enjoy the story. The station buzzed with the usual sounds of ringing phones, shuffling papers, and hurried footsteps. Yet, beneath the daily rhythm, an unspoken tension lingered. It was the kind of tension that made people glance over their shoulders, speak in hushed tones, and move quickly. Detective Olivia Hayes felt it the moment she stepped through the doors. It wasn't new. She had learned to recognize that weight, the sign that hung in the background like a storm waiting to break. Olivia had become accustomed to walking into spaces where she wasn't fully welcomed. She carried herself with the poise of someone who had fought to be where she was and refused to let anyone question it. But no amount of confidence could fully shield her from the looks, the whispers, and the constant undercurrent of doubt that followed her like a shadow. She felt it now, more sharply than usual, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Her steps echoed on the polished floor as she moved toward her office, nodding briefly at the few familiar faces she passed. Most returned her nod with polite smiles, though some quickly looked away. Olivia had learned not to take it personally. It wasn't her they doubted, not really. It was what she represented, the disruption of the old order, the breaking of patterns that had stood unchallenged for too long. The walls of her office were lined with framed certificates and awards, quiet reminders of the battles she had fought and won. Photos of her family filled the shelves, her parents, whose unwavering support had shaped her, her father's fireman's helmet, a symbol of sacrifice, and her mother's books on education, reminders of the lessons that had pushed Olivia to strive for excellence. But despite the warmth of her personal touches, the room still felt heavy. It wasn't just the weight of responsibility. It was the knowledge that every decision she made, every step she took, was scrutinized more closely than those of her peers. She could never afford a mistake, not even a small one. Across the station, Officer Ethan Wallace leaned back in his chair, arms folded, scanning the bullpen like a predator. Tall, broad-shouldered, and sharp-jawed, Ethan looked every bit the part. But there was something about him, something just beneath the surface, that set Olivia on edge. Ethan carried himself with the kind of arrogance that came from years of getting away with too much. He mistook fear for respect, wielding his authority like a weapon. People followed his orders, but Olivia had seen the way they avoided his gaze afterward. She had heard the stories whispered behind closed doors, stories of tempers lost, lines crossed, and complaints buried. Their relationship had been tense from the start. Ethan resented answering to Olivia, and Olivia had learned to pick her battles carefully. She knew confronting him outright would only fuel his resentment. Instead, she had focused on doing her job, building bridges with the rest of the team, and keeping Ethan at arm's length. That morning, Olivia had arrived early. Her usual routine was interrupted by an alert about an unauthorized individual in the restricted area. Before she could react, Ethan was already moving, barking orders. Olivia followed, her pulse quickening. The restricted area was dimly lit. It was meant to be a place of control, but the moment Olivia stepped inside, she felt anything but. Ethan stood in the center of the room, towering over a woman pressed against the wall, hands cuffed behind her back. Her shoulders were tight, but her eyes burned with defiance. "You don't belong here," Ethan said sharply. "Who let you in?" The woman lifted her chin. "I work here." Ethan's laugh was short and cruel. "You work here? Doing what? Cleaning the floors?" The woman flinched, but she didn't back down. "Look in my bag. My ID is in there." Olivia stepped closer. She saw the red marks where the cuffs dug into the woman's wrists, the tightness in her shoulders. But what struck Olivia most was the silence, the way everyone else avoided looking. "Ethan," Olivia said sharply. Ethan turned, surprised, then masked it with irritation. "Stay out of this, Detective. I've got it under control." "No," Olivia said, stepping forward. "You don't." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Ethan's face, but it was quickly replaced by arrogance. The woman's eyes locked onto Olivia's. Olivia felt the weight of what was happening. She saw the fear and humiliation beneath the woman's defiance. The echoes of Ethan's words hung heavy in the air. Olivia knew the confrontation had only just begun. The station walls, once symbols of justice, now felt suffocating. Olivia's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about one moment. It was about everything that led to it. The tension thickened. Olivia stood just inside the door, her eyes locked on Ethan. His body language radiated control, or the illusion of it. Olivia saw the cracks forming beneath his confidence. "I said I've got this handled," Ethan said sharply. "And I said you don't," Olivia replied. The woman in cuffs shifted, her breathing shallow. Olivia saw the marks on her wrists, the tension in her shoulders. "You think this changes anything?" Ethan asked the woman, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think she's going to step in and save you? You're not walking out of here until I get answers." The woman didn't flinch. "Answers to what? You haven't even asked me a question. All you've done is throw accusations and put me in cuffs without reason." Ethan's hand twitched at his side. "Take the cuffs off," Olivia said. Ethan spun around. "What? You heard me?" "Take them off now," Olivia said, her tone unwavering. His eyes darkened. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job." "No," Olivia shot back, her voice rising, "but I do get to tell you when you've crossed a line. And you crossed it the moment you put your hands on her without asking a single question. That ends now." Ethan's jaw tightened. The woman in cuffs looked at Olivia, and in her eyes Olivia saw hope. Ethan finally moved, reaching for the key clip. He hesitated, his hand trembling slightly, before unlocking the cuffs. The metal fell away. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked the woman. The woman nodded, her eyes still on Ethan. "I'll be fine." Ethan stepped back. "This isn't over," he muttered. "No," Olivia said. "It's not." The woman stood taller, straightening her shoulders. Olivia saw the determination in her eyes, but she also saw questions, doubts, and the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Ethan turned and stormed out of the room. "Let's get you out of here," Olivia said to the woman. The woman nodded. As they stepped into the hallway, Olivia could feel the stares, the whispers. She saw the way people looked at the woman. The woman hesitated at the door of Olivia's office. "Thank you," she said. Olivia shook her head. "Don't thank me yet. This isn't over." The woman's eyes flickered with relief, but Olivia could still see the tension. Ethan wasn't finished, and Olivia knew it. As she listened to the woman recount the events, Olivia's resolve hardened. Ethan wasn't just reckless, he was dangerous. The woman's voice trembled slightly as she described how Ethan had grabbed her, ignored her words, and twisted her arms behind her back. She talked about the looks, the judgment, and the fear. Olivia felt every word like a weight. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about the culture that allowed him to act this way. Olivia looked at the woman. The fire in her eyes still burned. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. As the minutes ticked by, Olivia thought about what needed to happen next. The evidence, the statements. Most of all, she thought about Ethan. He didn't see the storm building. The precinct was quieter than usual. Olivia could sense it. Conversations paused as she passed. The tension hadn't faded, it had thickened. She walked with purpose. The air felt heavier as she approached the main conference room. She pushed the door open. Conversations died. Ethan stood at the far end of the room, flanked by 2 investigators. "Glad you could join us," Ethan said. "I wasn't aware this meeting had started," Olivia replied. "We didn't think you'd need an invitation," Ethan said. One of the investigators cleared his throat. "Detective Hayes, we're here to conduct a formal review of the incident. We've received multiple statements and are gathering evidence. The claims against Officer Wallace are serious, and we need full transparency. We'll need to speak with both of you individually." "I have nothing to hide," Ethan smirked. "Neither do I," Olivia said. The tension shifted. Ethan's smirk faltered. Olivia saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. The investigators began asking questions. Olivia answered with precision. Ethan's answers were different. His voice was steady at first, but cracks began to show. The woman was brought into the room. Her posture was straight, her expression unreadable. She sat across from Ethan, her eyes locked on his. Olivia could feel the shift in the air. Ethan leaned back, trying to regain control. "I acted on instinct," he said. "I saw someone in a restricted area without ID, and I followed protocol." "Protocol," the woman interjected. "So, protocol includes handcuffing someone without asking for identification, dragging them through the station, ignoring every word they say because you've already decided who they are?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Olivia leaned forward. "That's what we're all trying to understand here, because what I see isn't protocol. I see an abuse of power." Ethan's face hardened. "Don't talk to me about power, Olivia. You're the one who's been walking around here like you own the place, making decisions that affect all of us without thinking about the consequences." The room went silent. "This isn't about me," Olivia said. "It's about what you did, and whether you're willing to face the consequences, or are you so convinced of your own authority that you think you're untouchable?" "I've earned my place here," Ethan said. "And so have I," the woman added. "And you treated me like I didn't belong." Ethan turned toward her, but Olivia stopped him. "You still don't get it, do you?" He looked back at her. "Get what?" "That this isn't your precinct anymore," Olivia said. "Not the way you thought it was." Ethan's face paled. The investigation wasn't just about this incident. It was about his entire record, complaints that had been buried, patterns of behavior that couldn't be ignored anymore. The investigators weren't there to protect him. They were there to expose him. The woman stood. "You looked at me and saw what you wanted to see, and because of that, you lost everything you thought you had." Ethan tried to speak, but his voice caught. Olivia stood too. "This investigation isn't over," she said, "but your career, it might be." The room felt suffocating. Ethan's eyes darted around, searching for support, but he found none. The silence spoke louder than anything else. Olivia knew this was the moment everything shifted. Ethan wasn't in control anymore. The room felt suffocating. Ethan sat frozen, gripping the table. His breathing was uneven. Olivia stood across from him, her eyes locked on his. There was no triumph in her expression, just resolve. Ethan tried to speak. "You're making a mistake," he said, but the words fell flat. I didn't. This isn't what it looks like." The woman didn't flinch. "Stop," she said, her voice low but firm. "Just stop. I'm tired of hearing excuses. I'm tired of you pretending this was a misunderstanding. You didn't see me as a person. You saw me as a problem you needed to handle." Ethan's jaw clenched. Then his shoulders sagged. "You don't get it," he muttered. "You don't know what it's like. To walk into a room and know that no one trusts you. To know they're just waiting for you to fail." The woman leaned forward. "You think I don't know what that feels like?" You think I haven't spent my entire career fighting to be taken seriously? You think I don't know what it's like to walk into a room and feel every set of eyes on me, waiting for me to prove that I belong? For the first time, Olivia saw something break in him. The cracks finally gave way, and the anger slipped away, leaving something raw and exposed. The investigator stepped forward. Officer Wallace, this isn't just about this incident. We've reviewed your record. Multiple complaints, most buried or dismissed, patterns of behavior that can't be ignored. This isn't an isolated event. It's part of a larger issue. You're making it sound like I'm a monster, Ethan said. I've given my life to this job. I've put myself on the line every single day, and this is what I get. Olivia stepped closer. No one is questioning your service, Ethan, but service doesn't excuse abuse of power. You think wearing this badge means you're above accountability? It doesn't. It means you're held to a higher standard, and you failed to meet it. Ethan's hands balled into fists. I made a mistake, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I messed up, but it wasn't personal. I didn't. It was personal, the woman interrupted. Whether you meant it to be or not, it was personal when you looked at me and didn't see someone who belonged. It was personal when you decided that my voice didn't matter. It was personal when you put those cuffs on me and paraded me through the station like a criminal. You humiliated me. You stripped me of my dignity because you thought you could. And now you're sitting here, acting like you're the victim. Ethan's shoulders slumped. The investigator spoke. Officer Wallace, effective immediately, you are suspended pending the outcome of this investigation. Further disciplinary action, including termination, will be considered. Suspended? Ethan said. It's more than fair, Olivia said. Ethan stood. You think this is over? You think you've won? This was never about winning, Olivia said. This was about doing what's right, something you should have thought about a long time ago. Now Ethan's eyes darted around the room. The silence was deafening. He turned and stormed out. The woman exhaled. Thank you, she said to Olivia. This isn't over yet, Olivia replied, but it's a start. They walked out together. Olivia knew the fallout wasn't finished. As they walked down the hallway, Olivia felt the weight of the day, but also a sense of resolve. She wasn't done fighting. This wasn't just about Ethan. It was about the culture that allowed men like him to thrive. The air in the precinct felt different. The lingering uncertainty, the cracks in the foundation. Olivia could feel it. People were watching, waiting. She closed her office door. Ethan's shadow still loomed. There were too many loose ends. The woman stood near the window. Do you think he's going to come back? She asked. He's been suspended, Olivia said. That buys us some time, but men like Ethan don't let things go easily. He's angry, humiliated, and that makes him dangerous. Us, the woman turned to face Olivia, her eyes sharp. So what happens now? He gets a slap on the wrist and walks away. Olivia stepped closer. No, that's not how this ends. I'm not going to let it end that way. The woman's eyes searched Olivia's face. The door opened and one of the investigators stepped in. We need to talk, he said. Ethan's already making noise. He's claiming this was retaliation. He's saying he's being targeted. Olivia's jaw tightened. Let him push. We have the evidence. We have the statements. He doesn't get to rewrite what happened. The investigator nodded. You need to be ready. This isn't just about Ethan anymore. It's about the department. People are already picking sides. And what side are you on? The woman asked. The investigator hesitated. I'm on the side of the truth. It will be this time, Olivia said firmly. The investigator nodded and left. Do you believe that? The woman asked. Olivia hesitated. I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? Hours passed. Olivia stayed late, preparing for the battle. The woman sat across from her. You should go home, Olivia said. Not yet, the woman replied. I don't want to leave until I know what's going to happen. We'll know soon enough, Olivia said, but you need to take care of yourself too. The woman nodded reluctantly. Promise me this won't get buried. I promise, Olivia said. The woman left. Olivia sat alone. The walls felt closer, the shadows darker. The phone rang. The voice was sharp and urgent. You need to get down here now. Olivia grabbed her coat and moved quickly. Flashing lights lit up the night. Officers gathered near the entrance. Olivia pushed through the crowd. Ethan stood near one of the cars, shouting, "This isn't over," he spat. "You think you've won?" "You need to step back, Ethan," Olivia said. "This isn't going to end well for you." "It already hasn't," he said. Officers moved in, taking his arms. Olivia watched as they led him away. "Make sure he's processed properly," she told one of the officers. "No shortcuts." The cold night air pressed against Olivia's skin. The flashing lights faded. The tension lingered. She turned back toward the station. Inside it felt hollow. She ignored the glances and hushed voices. She knew what they were thinking. She closed her office door. The tension followed. Ethan was gone, but his shadow still loomed. There were too many loose ends. The woman stood near the window. "Do you think he's going to come back?" she asked. "He's been suspended," Olivia said. "That buys us some time. But men like Ethan don't let things go easily. He's angry, humiliated, and that makes him dangerous." There was something else too, respect. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it was there. She reached her office and closed the door. Danielle was already there, pacing. "Is it over?" Danielle asked. "Not yet," Olivia said. "He's in custody, but this isn't the end. He's going to fight it." "I can't believe he still thinks he's the victim," Danielle said. "After everything he did, everything he said, he still doesn't get it." "He doesn't want to get it," Olivia replied. "If he does, he has to admit he's not the man he thought he was." "I don't care how he feels," Danielle said. "I care about what he did to me, what he took from me, and I want to know that he's going to pay for it." "He will," Olivia said, "but it's not going to happen overnight. He's going to fight back. He's going to twist the story. But we have the truth." Danielle's eyes burned with anger and fear. "What if the truth isn't enough?" "Then we remind them of the facts," Olivia said. "We remind them of what happened, and we don't let them forget. He's not the only one who gets to tell this story." "Do you know what the worst part was?" Danielle whispered. "It wasn't the cuffs. It was the way everyone else just stood there and watched. They didn't do anything." Olivia's stomach tightened. They were afraid. "And what about me?" Danielle asked sharply. "What about what happened to me? Where was their fear for that?" "You're right," Olivia said. "They should have done more. And that's exactly why this matters. Because what happened to you can't happen again. I just want him to feel what I felt," Danielle said. "I want him to understand what it's like to be powerless." "He will," Olivia said. "Trust me, he already does. But it's not about him anymore. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what you did." The door opened and one of the investigators stepped in. "We have a problem," he said. "Ethan's lawyer just filed a formal complaint claiming unlawful detention and discrimination. They're pushing for immediate reinstatement." Danielle's eyes widened. "Let them push," Olivia said. "We're not backing down." "You need to be ready," the investigator said. "This is going to get ugly." "It already is," Olivia replied. The investigator left. "You promised me he wouldn't get away with this," Danielle said. "And I meant it," Olivia said. "But you need to trust me. This isn't over." Danielle sat down. Olivia turned back to her desk. The battle wasn't over. "We're going to finish this," she said to Danielle. "And when we do, no one's going to forget what happened here." Danielle nodded. The fear was still there, but it was no longer in control. As the night dragged on, Olivia felt the weight of the fight wasn't over, not yet, and Olivia was ready to see it through to the end. The precinct was cloaked in an uneasy stillness. Olivia stood at the window of her office, her reflection faint against the glass. Danielle sat behind her, twisting the hem of her sleeve. "What happens now?" Danielle asked. "We wait," Olivia said. "Internal Affairs has everything they need, but Ethan isn't going to let this go." He shouldn't even have the chance, Danielle said sharply. He should already be gone. I know how you feel, Olivia replied, but the process doesn't always move as fast as we want it to. That doesn't mean we're not making progress. Progress? Danielle asked. He's still out there. He's still trying to twist this around. That's because it's easier for them to believe his story than to face the truth, Olivia said. If they admit what he did, then they have to admit they let it happen. And what about me? Danielle asked, her voice trembling. I'm the one who had to stand there while he treated me like I didn't matter. Olivia knelt beside her. It leaves you here, fighting, refusing to let him win, and it leaves me right here with you. What if that's not enough? Danielle asked. Then we keep going anyway, Olivia said, because the only way he wins is if we stop. The door creaked open and the investigator stepped in. We have a problem, he said. Ethan's legal team just filed another motion claiming unlawful detention and discrimination. They're pushing for immediate reinstatement. Unfair? Danielle asked sharply. He's the one who... Olivia cut her off. They're trying to create doubt. They're hoping they can undermine the investigation by making it about politics instead of facts. And it might work, the investigator said. There's pressure coming down from higher up. What about the backlash if they let him get away with this? Danielle asked. That's not going to happen, Olivia said. We're not letting this go. I don't care how much pressure they're under. We didn't come this far just to back down. I'll keep pushing, the investigator said, but you need to prepare yourselves. Ethan isn't going quietly. Neither are we, Olivia replied. The investigator left. You promised me he wouldn't get away with this, Danielle said. And I meant it, Olivia said, but you need to trust me. This isn't over. Danielle sat down. You're not alone in this, Olivia said. No matter how hard they push, I'm not leaving you to face this by yourself. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Danielle said. Yes, you can, Olivia said, and you're not doing it alone. I keep replaying it in my head, Danielle said. Every word he said, every look. It's like I can't get away from it. That's how people like him keep their power, Olivia said. They make you feel small, but you didn't, and you're not. Then why do I feel like I am? Danielle asked. Because he wanted you to, Olivia said. That's how he keeps control, but he doesn't have control anymore. You do. I want to believe that, Danielle said. He's not, Olivia said, but you have to believe it too. Danielle nodded slowly, but Olivia could see the doubt. That lingered. The phone rang, cutting through the tension. Olivia grabbed it. The voice was sharp. You need to get down here now. Olivia motioned for Danielle to follow. Danielle's pulse quickened. The halls felt narrower. When they reached the lobby, flashing lights and officers gathered near the entrance made Danielle catch her breath. Olivia pushed through the crowd. Ethan stood outside, shouting. That's enough, Olivia said. You think you've won? Ethan said. It's over, Ethan. Walk away before you make this worse. Worse? It's already worse, and it's because of you. No, Danielle said. It's because of you. Ethan's eyes snapped to her. The officers moved in. Ethan finally backed down. It's over, Olivia said, placing a hand on Danielle's shoulder. Almost, but we're not done yet. The courtroom was packed. Olivia and Danielle sat at the table. Across the room, Ethan sat at the defendant's table. The judge entered. The prosecutor laid out the evidence. Witness testimonies painted a damning picture. Olivia's statements were clear. Danielle's testimony was the turning point. She described the humiliation, the fear, and the anger. Ethan's lawyer tried to discredit her, but Danielle didn't flinch. When the jury returned with a guilty verdict, the air seemed to crackle. Ethan's face fell. The judge's voice echoed through the room as the sentence was read: termination, loss of pension, and criminal charges. Danielle exhaled. Olivia squeezed her hand. There was no celebration, just a deep, heavy silence. Ethan was led out in handcuffs. Days passed. The station began to feel different. The tension lifted. Olivia noticed the way officers greeted her now. Danielle returned to work, her head held high. She took on more responsibilities, becoming a voice for others. Policies were reviewed, training programs were overhauled, and the culture of the precinct began to shift. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One afternoon, Danielle stopped by Olivia's office. "I never thought I'd be able to walk through these halls without feeling that weight," she said softly. "And now?" Olivia asked. "Now I feel like I belong," Danielle smiled. Olivia nodded. "You always did. You just had to remind them and yourself." As Danielle left, Olivia sat back. She thought about everything it had taken to get here. The late nights, the fear, the doubt. She felt the weight lift just a little. The fight wasn't over, but they had taken the first step. This story isn't just about one man's fall or one woman's fight for justice. It's about the choices we make when faced with injustice. It's about the silence that allows abuse to thrive and the courage it takes to break that silence. It's about accountability, not just for those who abuse their power, but for those who stand by and do nothing. And it's about what happens when people decide to speak up, to fight back, and to demand better. How many times have we seen stories like this play out in real life? How many times have we turned away because it was easier than getting involved? This story challenges us to ask ourselves where we stand and what we're willing to do when we see injustice. Would you speak up? Would you stand beside someone who needed your voice? Or would you let fear keep you silent? Think about the choices the characters made, the courage it took for Danielle to fight back, the determination Olivia showed, and even the downfall of Ethan, who let his fear and arrogance destroy him. What would you have done? If this story made you think, if it made you feel something, then I want to hear about it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you took away from this. And if you want more stories like this, stories that challenge, inspire, and push us to see the world differently, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Tales of Twist, and hit the like button. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay tuned for more stories that make you question, reflect, and feel. See you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching and supporting Story Karma. Your engagement, whether it's watching, liking, commenting, or sharing, helps us continue bringing you powerful stories of crime, justice, and karma. We truly appreciate each and every one of you for being part of this journey. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Your support keeps this channel going, and we can't wait to share more incredible stories with you. Disclaimer: all stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. We advocate for a world where everyone has equal rights under the law, and where society continues to grow in fairness, development, and civilization. Our goal is to share heartwarming stories that contribute to making life better. Any resemblance to real events, individuals, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories are not meant to reference any actual people, events, or entities, and contain no political or religious connotations.